It was supposed to be a simple walk, nothing more than a stretch of legs after a long evening indoors. The night was unusually still, the kind of silence that feels heavier than air, pressing against your ears until you're convinced something is missing. No cars passed by, no distant chatter from houses, only the echo of footsteps on cracked pavement. The road stretched ahead, an endless ribbon of black, illuminated faintly by a broken row of streetlights. Some flickered weakly, others were completely dead, leaving long patches of shadow that swallowed the way forward. The narrator's voice lowers. This is where it began, a walk that should have lasted 10 minutes, but felt like an eternity. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Just the crunch of gravel beneath shoes, the faint rustle of leaves in the distant tree line. But the longer the walk continued, the more the air seemed unnatural. Too still. Not a single breeze shifted the branches above. Not a single insect sang in the grass. And then, that feeling. The one you cannot describe to anyone without sounding insane. The sensation of being watched. Every step down that road carried a weight, as if unseen eyes were locked on the back of the walker's neck. They turned once. Nothing. The street was empty, stretching endlessly in both directions. Yet the feeling did not leave. The silence broke. Not with a voice, not with a scream, but with something far subtler. A second set of footsteps. At first faint, almost imagined, they mirrored the walker's pace, slow, cautious, matching stride for stride. When the steps stopped, so did the echoes. When they resumed, the sound returned. The walker's breath quickened. The throat grew tight, the heart thudding in painful beats. But turning around revealed nothing. Just the road. Just the shadows. Still, the steps followed. The lights ahead flickered violently, buzzing, struggling to stay alive. The walker reached the next pool of light, standing beneath it for safety, convinced that whatever haunted the darkness would not dare step into the glow. But that was when the footsteps stopped. Not behind. Not beside. But somewhere. Closer. The walker strained to listen, chest heaving. Nothing. Only silence again. That was almost worse. And then, from deep within the trees lining the road, a sound drifted out. Low. Guttural. Like something exhaling after holding its breath for far too long. The walker froze. Every instinct screamed to turn back. But when they glanced over their shoulder, the road behind looked far longer than it should have been. As though the way home had stretched into an impossible distance. The only choice was forward. They swallowed hard, stepping off again, each footfall heavy against the pavement. The broken streetlights ahead seemed further apart now, each patch of darkness thicker, harder to pierce. And in those shadows, something moved. The walk should have ended by now. The road was familiar, a stretch that had been traveled countless times before, yet something had changed. What once felt like a short walk suddenly felt stretched, as though time itself had slowed and the pavement extended endlessly into the dark. The walker's pace quickened, shoes striking harder against the cracked asphalt. But with every hurried step came that dreadful certainty. There was another. The footsteps no longer tried to hide. They trailed behind, faint at first, but growing clearer, heavier, closing the distance. The rhythm was wrong, slower than the walker's, almost deliberate, like something savoring the chase. Panic rose, but logic fought against it. It's just your imagination. Just echoes. Just the night playing tricks. Yet no matter how the mind tried to rationalize, the body knew better. The hairs along the arms stood upright. The stomach churned. The neck tingled, waiting for a cold hand to grab it. The walker spun around. And once again, nothing. But the darkness behind was thicker now, as if the shadows had gained substance. The road, once familiar, seemed foreign, its features blurred by a veil of black. And somewhere within it, shapes lingered, tall, unmoving, watching. A flicker of movement broke the stillness. One of the shapes shifted, melting back into the tree line as if it had never been there. The walker's mouth went dry. Something was following. Breath hitched. Eyes darted frantically from tree to tree, light to shadow. The silence fractured by the faintest sound, a low, dragging scrape, like feet across gravel, too slow to be human. The walker hurried forward, nearly jogging now, heart hammering. With each step, the noise grew bolder. First footsteps, then whispers. A faint murmur, too low to decipher, like voices carried on the wind. They bled into each other, overlapping, surrounding. The walker stopped dead in their tracks, straining to hear. The whispers stopped too. Silence. But silence no longer felt empty. It felt crowded. A rustle in the branches overhead made the walker flinch. Looking up, they caught a glimpse of something between the leaves. Not an owl. Not a bird. Two pale circles reflecting the dim light, unblinking. Watching. A gasp escaped. The walker stumbled backward, nearly falling. But before they could run, the light ahead flickered once more. A shadow stretched unnaturally long across the road, bending, curling toward them like a hand. Frozen in terror, the walker whispered to themselves, "It's not real." It's not real, but the shadow twitched. And then, it moved closer. The walker bolted. Legs pumping, lungs burning, every muscle screaming to escape. But the faster they ran, the longer the road stretched. The streetlight ahead didn't draw nearer. It only shimmered faintly, like a star just out of reach. Behind, the footsteps no longer echoed. They thundered. Heavy, monstrous, closing in. And then came the whisper. Not from the trees. Not from behind. But right beside the walker's ear, "Keep walking." The voice was cold, breathless. So close it prickled the skin. The walker screamed, but no sound left their lips. Their voice was gone, stolen by the night itself. Ahead, the light died. One by one, every street lamp flickered out, plunging the road into suffocating black. And in that darkness, something reached out. The world was now swallowed by darkness. No lights, no safety. Only the faint crunch of frantic footsteps and the ragged sound of breath struggling to keep pace with terror. The road, once so clear, had dissolved into an indistinguishable void. The walker could no longer tell where the pavement ended and the forest began. The silence was gone. The whispers had returned. They slithered through the trees on both sides, hissing and muttering, rising and falling like waves. Dozens of voices, overlapping, speaking in tongues that almost made sense. Almost. Words hovered on the edge of recognition, familiar yet impossible to understand. The walker stumbled, clutching their chest, ears straining to catch meaning. And then, from within the chorus, one word broke free. Clear. Direct. Their name. Spoken softly, intimately, as though whispered by someone standing only inches away. The walker froze, spinning around wildly. Nothing but trees, their twisted silhouettes reaching skyward like skeletal arms. But the whispers continued, weaving their way between the branches, taunting, beckoning. "Come closer. We've been waiting. Don't stop walking." The tree line seemed to shift with each glance, pressing closer to the road, the trunks leaning in as though listening. The path narrowed, swallowed by shadow. The walker's throat was dry, words choking inside. Their minds screamed to keep moving, but their legs trembled with each step. The forest was alive. The forest was watching. A sound cracked the air, sharp, deliberate. A branch snapping underfoot. Not theirs. It came from the right. The walkers snapped their gaze toward the sound, eyes straining to pierce the black. At first, nothing. But then, movement. Something tall, thin, emerging slowly between the trees. Its form was vague, wrong somehow, the angles of its body bending where they shouldn't. Its head jerked unnaturally, as though it were adjusting to see better in the dark. The walker staggered back, stumbling to the other side of the road. But another sound followed. Another snap. Another movement. This time from the left. Another figure. And another behind it. Shapes gathering, stepping out from the forest line, pale faces faintly visible, eyes too wide, too white. The whispers surged, deafening now, pouring from every direction. They weren't words anymore. They were screams disguised as words, laughter twisted into sobs, voices stacked until the air itself trembled. The walker clamped hands over their ears, tears stinging their eyes, but it was useless. The voices weren't outside anymore. They were inside. Crawling through the mind, scratching at the walls of thought, digging deeper. Then, silence again. All at once, the figures had stopped, lining the trees on either side of the road. Still. Watching. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Their faces pale masks, their eyes glinting faintly in the void. The walker's chest heaved, their breath loud in the suffocating quiet. And then one of the figures smiled. A slow, deliberate stretch of lips that revealed nothing human. The trees groaned, their branches bending low, creaking under an invisible weight. The forest seemed to breathe. And then, in a chorus of voices, every figure whispered at once, "Keep walking." The road ahead bent sharply into darkness. A corner that should not have been there. A path the walker had never seen before. But there was no choice left. And so, trembling, they stepped toward it. The bend in the road should not have existed. The walker had traveled this street countless times. Yet now, as though reality itself had warped, the familiar path curved sharply into the unknown. The forest pressed closer on either side, branches knitting together above to form a suffocating canopy. The air grew thicker, colder, each breath visible as a pale mist. And then, silence again. No footsteps. No whispers. Not even the figures that once lined the trees. The walker was alone. Or so it seemed. Every step into the curve was heavier than the last, like walking deeper into a dream that no longer obeyed the rules of the waking world. The air carried a faint metallic tang, like rust or blood. The walker slowed, heart pounding, eyes straining to see ahead. That's when they noticed it, something waiting in the darkness. A shape, small at first, then taller, wider, clearer. It was standing in the middle of the road. At first, it seemed like just another shadow. But then the light shifted. No, not light, there was no light anymore. It was the shadow itself, bending unnaturally, shaping into something almost human. And then, as the walker's trembling eyes adjusted, they saw the face. It hovered just above the road, suspended in the black, featureless save for two enormous eyes. They gleamed with wet, glassy brightness, too wide, too unblinking. And the mouth, stretched impossibly long, a grin carved into pale flesh, teeth glistening like shards of glass. The walker staggered backward, gasping. But the face moved with them, sliding silently across the road, closing the distance without taking a single step. A sound rose from it, low at first, then swelling. A wet, guttural laugh. Not human. Not animal. Something in between. It rattled the chest, shook the bones, pressed against the skull like an infection of sound. The walker clutched their head, eyes burning with tears, begging silently for it to stop. But the laugh grew louder, closer, filling every corner of the road until it felt like the world was vibrating with it. And then, silence again. The face was gone. The walker turned wildly, eyes darting, chest heaving. Nothing. Empty road. Empty trees. Until a hand, ice cold, skeletal, clamped onto their shoulder. The walker screamed, spinning around, but nothing was there. The hand was gone. Yet the weight of its touch lingered, burning, pressing deep into the skin. The whispers returned, faint but sharp, hissing directly into their ears. One word, repeated over and over. Closer, closer, closer. The walker stumbled backward until they tripped, crashing onto the cracked pavement. Above, the branches shifted, revealing a sliver of sky. The moon should have been there, a familiar comfort. But instead, only blackness stared back. And then the face reappeared. Not far now. Not hovering. Kneeling. Inches from theirs. Its eyes were wide, swallowing the reflection of the walker's own terrified gaze. Its grin quivered with hunger, teeth chattering like bone on bone. It whispered, breath cold enough to freeze skin, "You're almost there." The road behind had vanished. There was no going back. The walker rose, legs trembling, and staggered forward into the last stretch of blackness, where the face followed. The final stretch of road lay ahead, though it no longer resembled a road at all. The cracked pavement had dissolved into dirt, into something ancient, damp, and cold beneath the walker's shoes. The air thickened further, heavy with rot, every breath like inhaling damp soil. The trees loomed inward, their twisted limbs now resembling hands, gnarled fingers reaching out, desperate to touch, to pull, to hold. The walker's legs felt heavy, as though wading through water. Each step drained strength, but the whispers would not let them stop. Keep walking. Almost there. Don't turn back. The face hovered at the edges of vision now, flickering in and out of existence, sometimes behind, sometimes ahead, sometimes right beside the walker's ear. Each time it appeared, its grin stretched wider, teeth sharper, its presence hungrier. The path grew narrower. The forest pressed so close that branches scraped against the walker's arms, leaving shallow cuts that bled silently. The trees were no longer silent. They spoke. They would creak with words, groaning syllables, moaning phrases that merged with the whispers. And through it all, one thought consumed the walker: there has to be an end. There has to be a way out. A faint glow appeared in the distance. Warm, soft. A light at the end of the path. Relief surged, burning through the terror. The walker pushed forward, heart pounding with hope. Faster, faster. But the closer they came, the stranger the light seemed. It wasn't steady. It flickered, bent, moved. And then, it took shape. It was a doorway. Standing in the middle of the forest, unsupported, freestanding. A single wooden frame, glowing faintly from within. Beyond it, only darkness. The walker hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to cross. But behind, the whispers swelled into a roar, the trees groaned louder, and the face reappeared, closer than ever, its grin trembling with anticipation. There was no choice. The walker staggered toward the doorway, breath ragged, hand trembling as it reached for the frame. The moment fingers brushed the wood, the whispers stopped. Everything stopped. The world froze. For the first time since the walk began, there was silence. Pure, empty. And then the voice returned. Not a whisper. Not a chorus. Just one. Calm. Cold. Direct. You've walked far enough. The walker turned. The face was there. No longer flickering. No longer distant. It was whole now, towering, filling the road, its eyes vast pools of black that swallowed every reflection. The walker tried to scream, but sound would not come. The grin widened, and with a snap of teeth, the face lunged. Darkness. When the walker opened their eyes again, they were standing on the same road as before. Streetlights flickered weakly. The night was still. The road stretched endlessly in both directions. Footsteps echoed. Their own. And then, a second set, matching stride for stride. The walk had begun again. It would never end.